Master Eckhart once said, "The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. My eye and God's eye are one seeing, one knowing, one love." Remember that Master Eckhart was a German theologian, philosopher, and mystic. He was born in 1260 and died in 1328. He was a member of the Dominican monks and was ultimately accused of being a heretic and died prior to the conclusion of his trial. He was quite a forward thinker, and certainly that quote shows his wisdom would be classified as metaphysical or new thought today. He recognized the oneness in all of us. Over 600 years later, Eric Butterworth in Spiritual Economics wrote, "True seeing is a flow of consciousness, flowing like a fountain from within. Thus, where you are in consciousness has everything to do with what you see and experience. If you have a sense of affluence, a sense of the omnipresence of substance, you are going to place that stamp on everything you see. It is not just that you will see things in a certain way, but your high level, God-centered seeing has a formidable power, having much to do with what actually happens in your world." In my preparation for today's lesson, I discovered that in the Science of Mind text alone, Ernest Holmes uses the word see, seeing, and sees 20 times, and the word I or eyes over 16 times. In the Bible, see, seeing, and sees are used over 700 times and eyes over 500. Needless to say, both words, see and I, are important to us to understand and pay attention to. It states in 1 John 4, 11, 12, "My beloved, if God so loved us, we ought also to love one another. No man has seen God at any time. If we love one another, God abides in us and his love is perfect in us." So here are 3 distinct quotes from various spiritual sources throughout the last 2,000 years that tell us, 1, we are one with God and with each other. 2, we see based upon our own consciousness. 3, if God sees us through the eyes of love, then it's up to us to see others through those same eyes. What happens, what happens in our world is all based on how we perceive it. So what prevents us from seeing each other through eyes of love or the Christ within? Mark Nepo is one of my favorite authors. In the Book of Awakenings, which is a daily reading book, he tells a story of a visit to his Russian-born grandmother. He drove over 300 miles to spend time with her, and she was 94 years old. She lived in a very small room in like an assisted living or a senior facility. After spending some time catching up with each other, they sat on the edge of the bed and they looked out through her window that was in front of them. And as they looked out, Mark realized that this one and only window probably had not been washed or cleaned in almost a year. And when he mentioned it to his grandmother, she chuckled with that Russian heavy accent and stated, "Got a dirty eye? See a dirty world." In essence, this wise woman was stating the obvious. What our mind sees and believes, our world becomes. So often we see as the cause of our challenges and see others as the cause of our challenges in life. We fail to look through a clear window into our own heart and the mind to see the truth of the divine. It is our task to return to the center within and keep our mind and our heart clear. As Nepo puts it, perhaps inner work is the ordinary art of window cleaning. One of my spiritual teachers, Dr. Reverend Marcia Sutton, always says that we have teachers and lovers in our lives. There are always more teachers than there are lovers. They're the individuals who mirror what we must heal within ourselves. And what we don't like to see in others, what irritates us about others, is usually what we don't like about ourselves. And until we heal our brokenness, we'll continue to have a dirty eye that sees a dirty world. It was September 5th, 2000. Kevin Haynes was a 19-year-old young man who suffered greatly from depression and bipolar disorder. And so one day he made a pact with himself. In that depression, he made the decision that he was going to commit suicide by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. But he decided that before he would commit suicide, in his travels from his home to get to the bridge and before he would jump off, if anybody would look at him, if anybody would ask him if he was okay, if anybody would catch him in the eye and really focus on him, he would not jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. Now, since its completion in 1937, over 2,000 people have committed suicide by jumping off that bridge. Only 25 of them have survived, and Kevin was one. And the way Kevin tells his story, he got on the bridge, on the bus in town to ride out to the bridge. And when he got off the bridge, the sidewalks on both sides were heavily populated with people. And he walked out, he was going to go to the center of the bridge to commit suicide. And so he made this decision that if anybody would look at him, and he begged for this in his own mind, if anybody would look at him and see his pain, he wouldn't commit suicide. Nobody did. And as he walked towards the middle of the bridge, he kept looking for someone to truly see him, someone to look into his eyes and see him. No one did. The sidewalks on the bridge continued to be filled with people. And so as he meandered his way to the center of the bridge, finally someone reached out to him and he thought, oh, good, I don't have to kill myself today. And it was a young woman who handed him a camera, and she said, would you please take my picture? For 5 minutes, he took a variety of poses for her and then handed her back her camera. She never ever once looked him in the eye. She walked away, and as she did, he grabbed with his hands on the railing and vaulted himself over the railing and began to fall at 70 miles per second and into the San Francisco Bay. And as he hit, it was like hitting concrete, and he broke a portion of his back. And as he came to the surface in tremendous pain, a sea lion got underneath him and held him up until a Coast Guard boat arrived to rescue him. I'm not blaming the people on the bus or those walking on the bridge or even the woman who wanted her picture taken. What I will say, however, is that all of us at some time have failed to see the Christ in another person who is crying out for recognition, crying out for help, crying out to be seen. We are reminded of this in Matthew 25:40. Truly, I tell you, even as much as you have done it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you have done it to me. There's that unity thing again. We're one with each other, and another's pain is one with us. Isn't it time for us to see the Christ in each other? Not too long ago, a friend of mine had a doctor's appointment for his annual checkup. And so part of the exam, the doctor took the light and checked in his eyes, and he had a terrible stigmatism. And so he half jokingly said to my friend, "You're nearly blind. You better get your prescription checked and make sure that you are doing okay and that it's up to date." So my friend called his ophthalmologist and made that appointment and went in. And any of you who have ever had an eye exam know that they have a special chair that you sit down, and there's an eye chart at the end of the room that you look at. And first they start with you seeing it without looking through that big machine that they try to regulate your prescription, and then they finally move that in. But the doctor looked at him and he said, "Take your glasses off," which he did. And he said, "Now I want you to start reading the chart." And he said, "Can you read that first letter or the first line on the chart?" And he said, "Well, of course, it's an A." So he said, "Okay, now can you see the second line?" "Oh yeah, CZY." "How about the next row? Can you read that for me?" "RNSCY." "How about the next row?" "Why, JMBOS." Finally, the doctor said, "Okay, you can put your glasses back on now." "How'd I do, Doc?" He was so excited. And the doctor looked at him and said, "Pretty good, except for the fact that the chart that you read was numbers. It wasn't letters." The way we see or don't see others will shape our life forever. When we fake what we see, when we're not being truthful to ourselves or others, we are not genuinely seeing. How you see and define others determines the nature of your relationship with them. I am sure that we have all made a negative judgment of someone and then ultimately reversed that opinion when we took the time to really see them, to really know them. How long does it take to make that first impression? Forget every figure you've ever thought. It used to be 15 seconds, and then it was 10, and then it was 8, and then it was 6. Well, in a recent study done by 2 Princeton psychologists, they indicates that it takes 1/10 of a second is all it takes to form a first impression. Longer exposures to the individual makes no significant alteration in that impression. So we look into somebody's eyes for less than a second, and already we've judged and categorized them and basically decided that this person I do or do not want to get to know. We have failed to move beyond that second to see the light within through the window of their eyes. Look at all we have missed. Look at all we've lost in life by not honoring the oneness everyone has through the eyes of God. I think we sort and label people because we feel safer that way. We've categorized folks since we were children. We remember being required to pick somebody for a kickball or a dodgeball team. And remember, there was always 1 or 2 that got picked at the last because they were terrible athletes, we thought. That was a labeling process. Or we picked friends based upon the clothes that they wear or what the latest style was. They were always up on it. That was sorting and boxing in by product or money. Or maybe we decided to not know them because they were another nationality or another race, or they went to a different spiritual home than where we went. We have pinholed and labeled people since the beginning of time. And because of that, we have truly failed to see who they are and who we are in relationship to them. We have failed to see beyond the outer appearances and honor the light within. My guess is if I ask you right now, you could give me a list of how you sort and label people in your life. We've all done it. We all do it. Now, can we release the need to do that and just see others through the eyes of God, and the good that they do in the world? Recently, a friend of mine was sharing me what she called a very rare parenting win. She has two kids, and they would, as most kids do, they fight, they hassle, they haggle with each other. And this one day in particular, they started yelling at each other. They started fighting. They started calling each other names. And so she decided that it was time to stop it. And rather than yelling at them or sending them to their rooms and separating them, she brought them together and she sat them down and she discussed with them that this was not what they were supposed to do, and that they were to talk nicely to each other. And it didn't take them too long to shake hands and say, "I'm sorry," and they went on their way. Well, it wasn't too long when she heard it happening again. And this time it became more volatile, more loud. And so she called them back into the room and she handed each of them a piece of paper and pencil. And she said, "Here's something that I'd really like you to do. I want you to put down 10 things on the list that you love about your brother." And she said, "You would have thought I had asked them to climb Mount Everest." It took both of them about 20 minutes. And then she called them back in and they came in and sat down and they shared that list with their brother. They played together again that day. Something was different about that relationship. They laughed and they helped each other. And why? Because they intentionally found the good in one another. And by finding that good and seeing each other through new eyes, it was different. That's what God does. She intentionally finds the good in each and every one of us. Regardless of what ethnicity, gender, religion, education, financial standing, job, whatever it is, God sees the good in everyone, even when we don't see it in ourselves. When we see others as God sees them, we no longer regard them from that human point of view. This new way of seeing transforms our relationships. We look at our family, our friends, our co-workers, our acquaintances, the homeless, and people of other cultures differently. We reach out to them in love. Maybe today you can set aside some time to make a list of all the things you love about someone you are challenged with. Make that list and see them through a new set of eyes. Clean the window a bit. A few years ago, on a dirt road leading to a monastery, about 130 miles south of Cairo, a group of terrorists hijacked a bus and killed more than half the people on it. This was part of a continued rise in sectarian violence within Egypt. Immediately, the outpouring of anger and frustration and hate poured over from many throughout Egypt and throughout the world. Many of the victims on the bus were children. Those killed were Coptic Christians, which is an ancient group of Christians who reside mostly in Egypt. They have a long history of violence against them. Usually after a horrific event such as this, the people express their rage, their frustration. They cry and they say, "We're going to get even." There's vengeance, there's anger. However, this time, the bishop of the Coptic church in Egypt gave a statement that no one was expecting. While it is a little long, it is well worth repeating. Here is what he said to the terrorists. "You are loved. The violent and deadly crimes you perpetuate are abhorrent and distasteful, but you are loved. You are loved by God, your creator, for he created you in his image and according to his likeness and placed you on earth for much greater things. You are loved by me and millions like me, not because of what you do, but what you are capable of as that wonderful creation of God who has created us with a shared humanity. Bishop Angelo said he grieves for the men who see it as not only justifiable, but glorious to take the lives of other young men and women. No family should lose a son in this way, even if they are partially or wholly responsible for this flawed ideology. Bishop Angelo said these attacks come from due to a loss of understanding of the sanctity of life. And he concluded by saying, what is important is not that this message be read, but that it be communicated. Not that it be accepted, but that it be understood as another perspective. And not that it should be fully embraced, but that it may create at least a shadow of a doubt in the minds of those intent on inflicting harm and pain. It is our purpose in life to keep returning to the place of divine love for others, to keep cleaning the windows of our minds so that we can see through to who they are. Ernest Holmes taught us that God experiences life through each and every one of us. We must choose. Do we want to see others through the eyes of God and unconditional love as the bishop did? Or would we rather move through life and see others based on the labels and the categories we have created, or the fear and the anger that we feel? The Zulu tribe in South Africa acknowledge each other with a very simple greeting. Sawubona. It means I see you. The response is Gigahona, which means I am here. The implied deeper meaning behind the reply is whatever you need in this moment, I am here. The Western greeting of hello comes from an Old English halo. It means that I demand that you halt and pay attention right here, right now. In the days ahead, may you truly see through the eyes of God. Rather than saying hello, may you go to that deeper place of I see you. May you truly know as you look into the windows of another person's soul that you see them from the divine creation that they are. Sawubona. I see you and you and you. I see your pain. I see your love. I see who you are and I care. This is the truth in my life, and this is the truth in yours. And so it is. Amen.